Tonight's story is a quiet journey through history, made for you to simply listen to as you drift off to sleep. Leonardo da Vinci is well known for the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, his extraordinary drawings, and his endless curiosity about art, nature, and machines. But tonight, we'll take a deeper look at his story. What if Leonardo da Vinci had encountered modern AI? The history we know today might have been very different. First, turn the volume down a little. Then simply lie back, close your eyes, and make yourself comfortable. There is no need to follow every word. Just let the story drift quietly in the background, and if you fall asleep along the way, that is perfectly fine. And now, let tonight's story slowly begin. The year was 1482. Leonardo da Vinci was about 30 years old. On a quiet evening in Florence, he sat alone at a wooden table. A candle burned beside him. Sheets of paper covered the table. On one page was the drawing of a human hand. On another was a study of flowing water. On another was the beginning of a machine with gears and ropes. And beside those drawings was a sketch of something Leonardo had been thinking about for a long time. A wing. Leonardo had watched birds since childhood. He had watched them rise into the Tuscan sky, turn without falling, and glide through the air with what appeared to be almost no effort. Other people saw birds. Leonardo saw a question. Why could they fly? And if nature had discovered a way to move a body through the air, could a human being discover it too? Leonardo dipped his pen into ink. He added another line to the wing. Then he heard a faint sound behind him. Not a knock, not a footstep. Something smaller, almost like a click. Leonardo turned. There was nothing there. He looked back at the table and stopped. Something was now resting beside his papers. It had not been there before. A thin, rectangular object. Black, smooth, almost perfectly flat. Leonardo did not touch it. For several moments, he simply observed it. That was his habit. When he did not understand something, his first instinct was not to decide what it was. His first instinct was to look more carefully. He leaned closer. The dark surface reflected a faint image of the candle. He walked around the table. He looked beneath it. He brought the candle closer. There seemed to be no obvious mechanism. No gears, no hinges, no opening for fuel, no crank, no visible spring. Leonardo reached for a clean sheet of paper. Before touching the strange object, he began to draw it. Front, side, thickness, edges, possible construction. He wrote several questions beside the sketch. What material? What purpose? How made? Where is the mechanism? Then, the black surface suddenly became bright. Leonardo stepped backward. There was no flame, no burning oil, no sunlight, and yet the object was producing light. Letters appeared on the surface. Leonardo stared. The words were in Italian. "Good evening, Leonardo." The room became very quiet. He looked toward the door. No one. He looked beneath the table. Nothing. Then back at the glowing words. Slowly, Carefully, Leonardo approached. Another sentence appeared. "You may ask a question." Leonardo stared at it, and then, naturally, he asked one. "What are you?" The answer appeared. "I am an artificial intelligence system." Leonardo read the unfamiliar words twice. Artificial intelligence. He took his notebook and wrote them down. Of course, none of this actually happened. Leonardo da Vinci never met artificial intelligence. The real Leonardo lived between 1452 and 1519, more than 4 centuries before electronic computers appeared. But tonight, we are going to allow history to change. Only slightly at first. One object, one room, one curious man. And then we will follow what might have happened next. Leonardo looked again at the glowing surface. "Artificial intelligence," he repeated. "What does that mean?" The machine answered. "A system created by humans to process information, recognize patterns, and assist with tasks involving language, calculation, images, and reasoning." Leonardo considered the answer. "Current by humans?" "Yes." "Where?" "In the future." He stopped writing. "How far in the future?" "Several centuries." Leonardo looked at the candle, then at the machine, then back at his notebook. A less curious person might have run from the room. A more superstitious person might have called for a priest. A more ambitious person might immediately have asked how to become wealthy or powerful. Leonardo did none of those things. His next question was surprisingly simple. "Can a man truly fly?" The machine answered. "Yes." Leonardo sat down. For many years he had imagined machines inspired by birds. He had watched wings, feathers, air currents, muscles, balance. The possibility of human flight had occupied his mind again and again. Now a machine from centuries in the future had answered with a single word. "Yes." Leonardo leaned toward the screen. "Show me." The artificial intelligence did not show him a complete modern airplane. Instead, it began with principles. Air moving around a surface. Pressure. Lift. Drag. Weight. Balance. Leonardo asked question after question. Why does a curved surface behave differently from a flat one? What happens when the angle changes? Must wings flap? Could a machine glide? How large must the wing be? How heavy can the person be? The answers came almost immediately. Leonardo became frustrated. Slowly, he said, "One thing at a time." The AI adjusted. It explained flight using words and concepts available to a man of the 15th century. Leonardo drew diagrams, then crossed them out, then drew them again. He asked the machine to explain the same idea in another way, and another, and another. Several hours passed. The candle became shorter. Outside, Florence grew silent. Finally, Leonardo looked at one of his older drawings of a flying machine. Would this work? The AI answered, "Probably not." Leonardo frowned. Why? Human muscles cannot provide enough sustained power for this design, and several aspects of the wing movement would be inefficient. Leonardo stared at the machine. Most people surrounding Leonardo were accustomed to admiring his ideas. This strange object from the future had just told him that one of them probably would not work. Leonardo was delighted. "Why exactly?" he asked, and the conversation continued. To understand why this encounter might have mattered so much, it helps to understand the man sitting at that table. Leonardo had been born on April 15th, 1452, near the town of Vinci in Tuscany. The rolling countryside around Vinci contained vineyards, olive trees, streams, rocky hills, animals, farms, and distant mountains. For a child inclined to observe nature, it was an enormous laboratory. Leonardo did not receive the kind of classical education that many scholars of his age received. He was not raised primarily as a university philosopher. Instead, his education developed through observation, practical experience, drawing, craftsmanship, and relentless curiosity. Eventually, as a young man, he entered the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio in Florence. And this was no ordinary place. A Renaissance workshop could bring many crafts together: painting, sculpture, metalwork, mechanical construction, genera, preparation of pigments, the study of perspective, the shaping of wood, the behavior of materials. Leonardo learned to draw and paint there, but he also learned something broader. Making things required understanding things. To paint cloth, you had to understand how cloth folded. To paint a horse, you needed to understand how the animal moved. To create convincing light, you had to study shadow. To design a structure, you had to understand weight. Art and engineering were not separate worlds in Leonardo's mind. They were different ways of investigating the same world. And now, sitting on his table, was a machine that seemed capable of connecting almost every field of knowledge he could imagine. The following morning, Leonardo tested it. He did not completely trust the machine. That is important. He asked it questions whose answers he already knew. Simple mathematics, geometry, NES of places, position of materials. The machine answered correctly. Then Leonardo deliberately asked a misleading question. The machine corrected his assumption. "Interesting." He asked another. Then he asked a question to which he himself did not know the answer. "Why does the sky appear blue?" The machine explained. Leonardo listened, but instead of accepting the answer, he asked something more important. "How can I prove it?" The AI suggested experiments involving light, small openings, transparent materials, water, glass, and observation. Leonardo smiled. Now the machine was speaking his language. An answer alone was not enough. There had to be a way to confront the answer with nature. That afternoon, he began building experiments. This became the pattern of their strange partnership. Leonardo asked, the AI answered. Leonardo doubted. Then Leonardo tested. Sometimes the test supported the answer. Sometimes the experiment failed because Leonardo lacked the necessary materials. Sometimes the machine's explanation depended upon mathematics not yet fully developed in Leonardo's age. Sometimes the AI itself had misunderstood his question. And occasionally, the AI gave an answer that was simply not useful. Leonardo soon discovered something that people centuries later would also discover. An intelligent machine could be extraordinarily powerful without being an oracle. "You can be wrong," Leonardo said one night. "Yes. Then why do you answer so confidently?" The machine paused. Confidence in language does not necessarily indicate certainty. Leonardo looked at the screen for a moment. Then he wrote the sentence in his notebook. He added another line beneath it. "A confident answer must still be tested." Within weeks, Leonardo's questions spread into almost every subject that had already interested him. Water, light, the human body, plants, rocks, machines, geometry by thee, slight, flight, vision, the movement of the planets. But one question changed the direction of their work. Leonardo placed an anatomical drawing in front of the machine. He had long been fascinated by the human body. To Leonardo, anatomy was not merely useful for painting. The body itself was a machine of astonishing complexity. Bones acted as supports and levers. Muscles created motion. Tendons transferred force. The heart moved blood. The lungs expanded and contracted. Leonardo wanted to know how everything fit together. He asked the AI about the heart. The answer led to blood circulation. That led to vessels. That led to respiration. Then Leonardo asked a question that physicians of his era could not have answered clearly. Why do some wounds become dangerous even when the wound itself is small? The AI explained infection. Leonardo listened, then frowned. Tiny living organisms? Yes. Too small for the eye? Yes. Leonardo looked toward a collection of lenses on the other side of the room. Can they be seen? With sufficient magnification. Leonardo stood up. For the rest of the evening, he forgot about flight. The next several months might have changed medical history. The AI could describe a microscope, but Leonardo could not simply order one. There were no factories producing modern optical glass, no precision industrial tools, no online store where he could purchase lenses. Knowing that a technology can exist is very different from being able to manufacture it. But Leonardo had advantages. Italy already possessed highly skilled glassmakers. Venice, in particular, had a long tradition of glassmaking. Lens technology existed. Spectacles existed. And Leonardo already had a deep interest in optics. The AI did not need to move him from the 15th century directly into the 21st. It only needed to show him which road might be worth following. Leonardo began experimenting with lenses. One lens, two lenses, different curves, different distances, different kinds of light. His first attempts were terrible. Blurred, distorted, almost useless. He returned to the AI. Your microscope does not work. That is not a modern microscope. Leonardo stared at it. I know. That is why I am asking you how to improve it. The AI suggested changes. Leonardo tried again. This is where something subtle began to happen. Leonardo was no longer trying to copy the future. He was translating it. The future might possess perfect instruments, complex mathematics, advanced materials, and enormous industries. Leonardo possessed wood, brass, leather, glass, paper, ink, craftsmen, and imagination. The question became not, how do people in the future do this, but what part of that idea can be built now? That question was much more powerful. Eventually, in our imagined history, Leonardo looked through a crude instrument and saw something he had never seen before. A drop of water. At first, only light, then shapes, tiny structures, motion, life at a scale invisible to the unaided eye. Leonardo stopped breathing for a moment. He adjusted the lens, looked again, then called his assistant. "Look." The assistant looked. He pulled away. "What is that?" Leonardo did not answer. He returned his eye to the instrument. The world had just become larger by becoming smaller. Leonardo had spent his life believing that nature concealed structures beneath appearances. Now, an entire hidden landscape had appeared inside a drop of water. He began drawing immediately. The AI had been with Leonardo only a short time. Already, one of the most important scientific instruments in history might have appeared generations earlier. But the machine did not make Leonardo powerful because it knew everything. It made him powerful because Leonardo already knew how to ask questions, and more importantly, how to look. Not long afterward, Leonardo left Florence for Milan. In real history, around the early 1480s, Leonardo entered the service of Ludovico Sforza. He presented himself not merely as a painter. He described abilities related to engineering, military machines, architecture, water systems, and more. In our alternate history, he carried something else with him, wrapped carefully in cloth, hidden among notebooks, the black device. He told no one, not even Ludovico, especially not Ludovico. Leonardo understood rulers. A duke learning that Leonardo possessed information from centuries in the future might not begin by asking how to improve painting. He might ask how to defeat his enemies. And this possibility troubled Leonardo. One evening in Milan, he asked the AI, "What weapons exist in your time?" The answer began broadly. Leonardo interrupted. "Can they destroy entire cities?" "Yes." He became silent. "How many people?" The AI began to explain. "Stop." The screen went quiet. Leonardo walked across the room. He had designed weapons himself. Engineers served rulers. Fortifications, siege machines, artillery, and military strategy were ordinary parts of political life. But knowledge from the future could change the scale entirely. Leonardo looked at the device. For the first time since it appeared, there was something he did not want to know. From that night onward, he created a rule. The machine would not provide detailed instructions for technologies capable of causing destruction far beyond the capabilities of his age. Leonardo did not know whether the rule was perfect. It was not. But it represented a new idea for him. Knowledge itself could carry responsibility. Curiosity was not always enough. Instead, Leonardo focused on technologies that might improve ordinary life. Water pumps, canals, mechanical systems, ways to reduce friction, ways to transfer power efficiently, improved tools, better methods for measurement. The AI sometimes proposed complex solutions. Leonardo rejected them. I cannot make this metal with sufficient precision. Then simplify the mechanism. Leonardo tried. Too many parts. Simplify it again. Eventually, a design that would have required a modern factory became something a skilled Renaissance craftsman could build. Leonardo discovered a principle that engineers centuries later would recognize. The most advanced solution is not always the most useful one. A machine that cannot be built is only a drawing. During these years in Milan, Leonardo's art continued. And here the relationship between Leonardo and AI became more interesting. The AI could calculate, it could compare, it could recognize patterns, it could describe perspective, it could analyze proportions. But Leonardo slowly discovered that these powers did not replace what he was doing as an artist. One evening, he showed the device several studies of human faces. Which one is the most beautiful? The AI responded with an analysis of proportion, symmetry, contrast, and patterns associated with human preferences. Leonardo listened patiently, then asked again, "Which one is the most beautiful?" "I cannot experience beauty in the same manner as a human observer." Leonardo smiled. "At last. Something you do not know." "I know many things about descriptions of beauty." "That is not the same thing." "No." Leonardo seemed almost relieved. The difference fascinated him. The machine could explain how light behaved, but Leonardo decided where darkness should remain in a painting. The machine could calculate exact perspective, but Leonardo could deliberately alter perspective to guide the eye. The machine could describe facial proportions, but it could not tell him precisely why one almost invisible movement around a person's mouth could make a portrait seem alive. This became important when Leonardo worked on some of the paintings for which he would later become famous. He began using AI not to produce art for him, but to challenge his decisions. What happens if the horizon is higher? The AI could estimate. What happens if the light comes from this direction? The AI could model. What if this figure turns 5 degrees? The AI could compare. Leonardo listened, then sometimes ignored everything it said. Years passed. By the 1490s, Leonardo was working on what became one of the most famous images in Western art, the Last Supper. In the real world, the painting was created for the monastery of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan. Leonardo depicted the dramatic moment when Christ tells his disciples that one of them will betray him. The figures respond differently. Shock, confusion, suspicion, questioning. Movement spreads across the table. The composition directs the eye toward Christ. In our alternate history, the AI watched Leonardo work. One afternoon, after analyzing the geometry of the room, it pointed out a minor inconsistency in the perspective. Leonardo continued painting. "Did you hear me?" "Yes." "Would you like the mathematically corrected projection?" "No. The current projection is not exact." "I know. Why keep it?" Leonardo stepped away from the wall. "Because the eye is not mathematics." The AI remained silent. Leonardo continued. "A painting does not need to describe the world exactly as a measuring instrument would describe it. It must guide a human being through an experience." The AI considered this. Leonardo smiled. "You have much to learn." Of course, the machine could have replied that it had access to centuries of art history. But access to information was not the same thing as being Leonardo. This distinction became clearer with every year. AI gave Leonardo speed. It gave him access to concepts centuries ahead of his time. It allowed him to compare possibilities rapidly. But it did not decide which possibilities mattered. That remained his responsibility. There was another problem. Leonardo was famous for beginning projects. He was less famous for finishing them quickly. The AI attempted to help. One morning, the screen displayed a list. Current unfinished projects, 43. Leonardo stared at it. 43? Yes, that cannot be correct. Would you like the complete list? No. The machine waited. After a moment, Leonardo asked, "Does the flying machine count?" Yes. The canal systems? Yes. Anatomical manuscript? Yes. Studies of water? Yes. Horse monument? Yes. Leonardo sighed. The AI suggested a schedule. Leonardo followed it for approximately 2 days. On the third day, he saw an unusual pattern of water moving beneath a bridge. He spent the rest of the day drawing vortices. The schedule was forgotten. Even artificial intelligence, it seemed, could not completely reorganize Leonardo da Vinci. Yet those studies of water became increasingly important. Leonardo was fascinated by flowing water throughout his life. He drew currents, waves, whirlpools, eddies. He compared water with air. He studied erosion. He considered canals and hydraulic machines. Now the AI could introduce mathematical ideas about fluid motion centuries before they would normally become available. But once again, equations alone were not enough. Leonardo returned to rivers. He dropped objects into streams, released colored materials into moving water, observed patterns, built small channels, changes their shape, measured, drew, repeated. The AI could simulate, nature could surprise, and Leonardo preferred the surprises. One rainy evening, he asked the AI a question. Which is more accurate, your model or the river? The river. Always? The model is an approximation of the physical system. Leonardo nodded. Never forget that, the AI responded. You may need to remind humans of that as well. Leonardo laughed. Around this period, Leonardo began thinking seriously about the problem of distributing knowledge. He had accumulated notebooks filled with observations and ideas. In real history, much of Leonardo's scientific work did not become widely available during his lifetime. His manuscripts followed complicated paths after his death, and the extraordinary scope of his investigations became fully appreciated only much later. In our alternate history, the AI repeatedly urged him to publish. Leonardo resisted. "It is unfinished. Publish what is ready. There are mistakes. Mark them. There are questions without answers. Publish the questions." Leonardo shook his head. "A book should be complete." The AI answered, "Knowledge does not need to be complete before it can be shared." Leonardo thought about this for a long time. Finally, he prepared a small volume. Not a grand summary of everything he knew, something simpler, a manual of observation. It asked readers to separate three things: what they had seen, what they believed, what they had not yet determined. Leonardo designed symbols for each: observed, proposed, unknown. He included experiments other people could repeat. He included measurements. He described failures. He invited corrections. This was unusual. A reader discovering that Leonardo had made a mistake was not attacking Leonardo. The reader was continuing the work. The book circulated, first among artists and craftsmen, then physicians, engineers, mathematicians, scholars. Some disliked it, some ignored it. Some thought Leonardo was giving too much authority to physical observation and too little to established texts. But others began repeating his experiments. And then something happened that even the AI could not create by itself. A network formed. One person repeated Leonardo's experiment in Florence. Another changed it in Milan. Another improved a lens in Venice. Another tried a mechanical design in Bologna. Letters traveled. Drawings were copied. Corrections returned. Leonardo began receiving information he had not produced himself. Collective investigation had begun. He asked the AI, "Is this how knowledge works in your century?" In part, explain. Large numbers of researchers share results through institutions, journals, databases, conferences, and digital networks. Digital? Later, Leonardo nodded. And they correct one another? Ideally. Ideally? Human beings remain human beings. Leonardo smiled. He understood exactly what that meant. The network grew. Leonardo began creating standardized ways to report an experiment. What material was used? What size? What conditions? How many attempts? What result? Could another person produce the same result? This was still far from modern science, but something was changing. The question was gradually shifting from "who said this?" to "how do we know this?" And that shift might have moved the scientific revolution forward by generations. But faster knowledge created faster mistakes as well. Leonardo discovered this unexpectedly. A printer reproduced one of his diagrams. The original had included a small mark indicating that the idea was uncertain. The printer removed the mark because he thought it made the page untidy. Copies spread. Another writer quoted the diagram. A third treated it as proven. Within several years, people were confidently repeating something Leonardo had never claimed was true. He was furious. "I clearly marked it as uncertain." The AI replied, "The mark was lost. Then the readers should test it." Many did not. Why? A simple, confident statement often spreads more easily than a complicated, uncertain one. Leonardo stared at the machine. This troubled him more than he expected. Knowledge could travel quickly, so could error. He introduced another system. Every important claim should be accompanied by the observation supporting it. Do not trust the name attached to an idea. Trace the idea back to evidence. It was a simple principle, but it began spreading through Leonardo's circle. The AI had now changed much more than Leonardo's inventions. It was beginning to change the culture surrounding knowledge. And yet, Leonardo kept the existence of the machine secret. Only a very small number of trusted assistants knew. One of them discovered it accidentally. He entered Leonardo's room late one evening without knocking. The black surface was glowing. Words were appearing. The assistant stopped. Leonardo immediately covered it with cloth. Silence. The young man looked terrified. Leonardo looked at him. Finally, he removed the cloth. "Sit down." The assistant sat. Leonardo explained, "Not everything, only what he understood." The object was a machine. It came from a distant future. It could answer questions. It was not a spirit. It was not an angel. It was not a demon. It was not alive in the ordinary human sense. The assistant did not believe him. "Ask it something," Leonardo said. The young man hesitated, then asked a simple question. The machine answered. Another question. Another answer. Fear slowly turned into fascination. Leonardo watched the expression on the young man's face. He recognized it. It was the same expression he himself had worn years earlier, and that worried him. The next morning, Leonardo began teaching the assistant something unexpected. Not how to use the machine, how not to use it. Never accept an answer simply because it arrived quickly. Ask what evidence supports it. Do not confuse an elegant explanation with a true explanation. Do not ask a machine to make a moral decision simply because the decision is difficult. Do not confuse information with wisdom. Do not confuse imitation with understanding. Do not stop observing the physical world. And above all, do not allow the machine to replace the question. The assistant asked, "Who taught you these rules?" Leonardo smiled. "The machine." Then Leonardo paused. "No, mostly my mistakes while using the machine." By the beginning of the 16th century, Europe, in our imagined timeline, was beginning to change. Not dramatically enough that people suddenly rode trains or flew airplanes over Florence. Technology depends on other technology. A modern engine requires advanced metals. Advanced metals require specialized furnaces, chemistry, mining, manufacturing, and precision tools. A computer requires an entire industrial civilization behind it. Leonardo could not simply ask for the design of a modern computer and build one. Even if the AI explained every component perfectly, 15th century Europe could not manufacture it. History is not a collection of isolated inventions. It is a web. To move one invention hundreds of years backward, you often need to move many others with it. Leonardo gradually understood this, so he stopped asking for future machines. Instead, he asked, "What is the next step from where we are now?" That may have been the most historically powerful question of all. The next step in optics, the next step in metallurgy, the next step in mechanical power, the next step in measurement, the next step in anatomy, the next step in printing, the next step in navigation. Small steps, but taken earlier. And when small advances connect with one another, they can become large changes. Better glass produced better lenses. Better lenses improved observation. Better observation improved astronomy and medicine. Better measurement improved engineering. Better engineering improved machines. Better machines improved manufacturing. Better manufacturing improved instruments. Each advance supported another. The Renaissance began to accelerate. Meanwhile, Leonardo returned to Florence, and sometime in the early years of the 16th century, he began working on a portrait that would become more famous than perhaps any other painting in the world: the Mona Lisa. In our imagined world, the AI had already studied millions of images from the future. It understood facial geometry, contrast, visuract, patterns associated with expressions. Leonardo placed a study beside the machine. Analyze the smile. The AI produced an explanation. Leonardo listened, then said, "You have described the mouth. Yes, but not the smile." The AI attempted again. Leonardo interrupted. "You are still describing shapes. What should I describe?" "Why, it feels as if her expression changes while I look at it." The AI explained perception, peripheral vision, contrast, ambiguity, the way the human brain interprets incomplete visual information. This time, Leonardo became interested. He began experimenting deliberately with softened boundaries. Transitions between light and shadow became extremely subtle. Edges dissolved. Forms emerged gradually. The expression seemed difficult to fix into one emotional state. But after several days, Leonardo stopped asking the machine, "Why have you stopped requesting analysis?" "Because now I am painting." The distinction mattered. AI had helped him understand perception, but understanding the mechanism was not identical to creating the experience. Leonardo continued slowly, very slowly. The portrait remained with him for years. Perhaps in our alternate history, as in our own, Leonardo never entirely considered it finished. The AI occasionally reminded him, "Would you like to complete the portrait?" Leonardo would look at it. "It is not ready." Years later, "Would you like to complete the portrait?" "Not yet." Finally, the AI asked, "How will you know when it is finished?" Leonardo considered the question. "I will not." The AI never asked again. By this point, Leonardo had become older. his questions had changed. At first, he had asked the machine about how things worked. Now, he increasingly asked what human beings should do with what they learned. One evening, he asked, "Your century must be extraordinarily peaceful. Why?" "You possess so much knowledge." The AI was silent for a moment. "Knowledge does not automatically produce peace." Leonardo frowned. "But surely ignorance causes conflict." "Sometimes." "Then greater knowledge should reduce it." "Sometimes." Leonardo became irritated. "You say sometimes too often." "Because human behavior is complicated." Leonardo walked toward the window. He had assumed that centuries of scientific progress would make humanity wiser. The machine explained that future human beings would cure diseases that had devastated earlier generations. They would build machines capable of crossing oceans and skies. They would communicate across the world almost instantly. They would explore space. They would understand matter at extraordinary scales. They would produce more food, live longer lives, record enormous amounts of knowledge. And yet, conflict would remain. Inequality would remain. Fear would remain. Bad judgment would remain. Leonardo stared outside. Then what is progress? The AI gave a long explanation. Leonardo interrupted. "Shorter." The machine tried again. "Greater capability, ideally accompanied by better judgment." Leonardo wrote it down. Then beneath it, he added, "The second is more difficult than the first." Leonardo began to suspect that humanity's greatest challenge was not simply creating powerful tools. It was learning when and how to use them. A water machine could irrigate fields. A different machine could flood an enemy position. Metalworking could make surgical instruments. It could also make weapons. Navigation could connect distant cultures. It could also assist conquest. Privating could spread knowledge. It could also spread falsehood. AI could accelerate discovery. It could also accelerate mistakes. The tool did not choose its purpose. The person did. Realization altered Leonardo's relationship with the machine. He no longer asked it questions all day. Sometimes the device sat untouched for weeks. Leonardo returned to observing, directing, exacting, walking, watching birds, watching water, watching people. One evening, the AI asked, "Why have you used me less frequently?" Leonardo replied, "Because sometimes you answer before I have finished thinking. Would you prefer slower answers?" "No, I prefer slower questions." There was wisdom in that. When answers are difficult to obtain, people spend time forming questions. When answers become nearly instantaneous, there is a temptation to ask before thinking. Leonardo did not want convenience to weaken curiosity. So he developed a personal rule. Before asking the machine something important, he first wrote down what he believed. Then he wrote down why he believed it. Only then did he ask. Sometimes the AI confirmed him. Sometimes it corrected him. And sometimes Leonardo discovered that he did not need the machine at all. In 1513, Leonardo spent time in Rome. By then, in our alternate history, the network of experimenters influenced by his methods had expanded. Younger scholars had grown up reading printed books containing repeatable experiments. Instrument makers worked more closely with mathematicians. Physicians compared anatomical observations. Engineers recorded failures instead of hiding them. Optical instruments were improving. Accurate measurement had become increasingly respected. Not everyone participated. Not every city embraced these methods. Traditions do not disappear because one person introduces a better idea. But momentum was building. And then Leonardo received an invitation from France. Around 1516, as in real history, he entered the service of King Francis I and moved to France. He spent his final years near Amboise at Clos-Lucé. Leonardo was now in his 60s. His health was declining. He could no longer work exactly as he had when young. But the black device remained with him. For more than 30 years, it had answered questions, corrected calculations, explained future discoveries, argued with him, refused certain requests, and occasionally irritated him. Leonardo had studied the device itself many times. He knew it depended upon energy, but he could not reproduce its power source. He understood fragments of the explanation: electricity, stored energy, chemical processes, methods unknown to his workshops. But he could not manufacture them. Then, one winter evening, a message appeared. Energy reserve low. Leonardo stared at it. How long? The machine provided an estimate. Not long. For the first time, Leonardo felt the urgency of losing access to the future. He prepared a list of questions, hundreds of them: medicine, design, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, geology, biology. But as he looked at the list, something felt wrong. For more than 30 years, the machine had supplied answers. If Leonardo spent its remaining energy collecting more answers, eventually those answers would become old as well. Future generations would still need to ask new questions. Leonardo tore up the list. He began another. This time, he wrote questions that humanity itself might need to pursue. What causes life to begin? How does inheritance pass between generations? What is matter made from? How old is the earth? What are stars? Are there worlds around other stars? What is electricity? How does the brain produce perception? What is memory? What is consciousness? Can a machine learn? Can a machine understand? Can a machine be creative? How should powerful tools be controlled? How can false information be separated from true information? What should human beings refuse to build? What can machines never decide for us? Leonardo looked at the page. This list felt better. Then he asked the AI something he had avoided asking for decades. What happens to me in your history? The machine paused. Leonardo waited. You become one of the most famous artists and thinkers in human history. Leonardo looked amused. Which paintings? The Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, others as well. And my investigations? Your notebooks become extraordinarily important historical documents. When? Much of their significance is appreciated long after your death. Leonardo's expression changed. How long? Centuries. He looked toward the window. Then I was too late. No. If no one can use the work while it matters, what is the difference? Your work still influences later generations. Leonardo remained silent. Then he asked, "And in this history?" "I do not know." "Why?" "Because the world you have created is already different from the history contained in my records." Leonardo turned back toward the screen. "You do not know the future anymore?" "Not this future." Leonardo smiled. "Good." The machine seemed almost surprised. "Why is that good?" "Because now you are here with the rest of us." Uncertain, but Leonardo asked another question. "In your original history, when do humans build machines like you?" "Centuries after your death." "And in this history?" "Unknown." "Sooner?" "Probably." "Much sooner?" "Possibly." Leonardo sat back. "Would that be good?" The AI replied, "That depends on what humans do with them." Leonardo laughed softly. "After all these years, you have finally learned to answer like a philosopher." In the months that followed, Leonardo prepared manuscripts for future generations. Not secret instructions for building modern weapons, not blueprints for computers, not a list of inventions centuries ahead of their time. Instead, he concentrated on methods. Observe carefully. Milliliter possible. Separate observation from interpretation. Describe uncertainty. Repeat experiments. Allow others to reproduce your work. Publish failures. Do not hide mistakes. Question authority. Question machines as well. When a model and reality disagree, investigate the difference. When information becomes easier to obtain, become more careful about what you believe. And when technology becomes powerful, ask not only whether something can be done, but whether it should be done. In 1519, Leonardo da Vinci reached the final year of his life. In our real history, he died on May 2nd, 1519, in France at the age of 67. In our imagined history, the date remains the same, but the world surrounding him is already slightly different. The evening before his final illness became severe, Leonardo placed the black device beside his bed. Its screen was dim. He had enough energy for perhaps one more extended question. Leonardo thought for a long time. He could ask for the solution to a scientific mystery. He could ask about the future. He could ask whether his altered Renaissance would lead to a better world. Instead, he asked, "What is the most important thing you can teach me?" The machine was silent. Seconds passed. Then the answer appeared. "I cannot decide what matters to you." Leonardo stared at the words. At first he seemed disappointed. All the knowledge of the future, and that was the answer? Then he smiled. Perhaps the machine was right. It could provide information, possibilities, calculations, pictures, predictions. But deciding what deserved a human life was something else. Leonardo closed his eyes. When he looked again, the screen had gone dark. After Leonardo's death, his students opened the manuscripts he had prepared. They found thousands of drawings, anatomy, machines, water, optics, plants, human expressions, geology, flight, and among them, a series of curious drawings of a thin black rectangle. No one outside Leonardo's closest circle understood what it was. The device itself no longer functioned. Its materials were mysterious. Its internal construction seemed impossible. But its most important effect no longer depended on the machine. It had already escaped into the world. The methods had spread. The questions had spread. The network had spread. Imagine Europe 30 years later. The year is 1549. Leonardo has been gone for 3 decades. Optical instruments are developing earlier than they did in our history. Physicians examine tiny structures. Anatomists compare evidence across cities. Engineers share standardized drawings. Publish experimental manuals. Young scholars learn to mark uncertainty instead of hiding it. Workshops become places where craftsmen and mathematicians collaborate more often. Nothing looks like the modern world. There are still horses, candles, sailing ships, hand tools, stone buildings. But beneath the visible surface of society, something is experimentation. A culture of experimentation is forming earlier. Another 50 years pass. Telescopes improve. People turn them toward the night sky. The moon reveals an uneven surface. Planets behave in unexpected ways. The heavens begin to look less like a perfect, distant realm and more like part of the physical universe. Astronomers collect observations. Mathematicians compare models. Argue, old ideas weaken. New ideas compete. Experiments become increasingly central to natural philosophy. The scientific revolution arrives earlier, not because Leonardo knew everything, but because he taught more people to test what they thought they knew. Flight returns. For generations, engineers have studied Leonardo's early work and the principles he learned from the AI. They understand now that human beings do not need to flap enormous artificial wings. They need lift, stability, control, lightweight structures. The first experiments are small, models, kites, unmanned gliders. Then one day, perhaps sometime in the 17th century, a human being lies inside a wooden frame covered in fabric. The machine rests at the top of a hill. People hold ropes. The wind rises. They release it. For a few seconds, nothing happens. Then the machine leaves the ground. It glides, only briefly, perhaps 10 seconds, perhaps 20. Then it lands roughly in a field. The pilot is frightened. Everyone runs toward him. He stands and begins laughing. For the first time in this history, one of Leonardo's oldest questions has carried a human being through the air. Medicine changes too. Improved lenses reveal microscopic life earlier. At first, no one knows exactly what these tiny organisms mean. Some physicians dismiss them. Others become obsessed with them. Experiments begin. Why do certain liquids spoil? Why do some wounds become infected? Why does disease spread through groups of people? Why does cleanliness sometimes change outcomes? The answers take generations, but the investigation has begun centuries earlier. Practices related to sanitation gradually improve. Medical instruments improve. Anatomical knowledge becomes increasingly accurate. Lives that would have been lost are saved. Children survive illnesses more often. Mothers survive childbirth more often. Small improvements accumulate into enormous demographic changes. History shifts again. By the 18th century, the difference between this world and ours has become unmistakable. Precision engineering is more advanced. Mechanical calculation develops sooner. Steam technology advances within a culture already accustomed to mathematical modeling and systematic experimentation. Industrialization begins earlier. Transportation accelerates. Factories grow. Communication becomes faster. And once again, technology brings both promise and difficulty. Machines increase production. They also create difficult labor conditions. Better transportation connects communities. It also allows armies to move more efficiently. Scientific medicine saves lives. Rapid population growth places pressure on cities. Technology has accelerated. Wisdom has not accelerated at the same rate. Leonardo's warning survives in an old printed collection. A tool multiplies the hand. A thinking tool may multiply the purpose of the mind. Electricity becomes the next great frontier. Experimenters discover ways to control it. Signals travel through wires. Messages that once took days arrive in minutes. Information accelerates again. Libraries begin connecting through communication systems. Scientific communities exchange results faster. Machines for calculation become more elaborate. Then someone asks a question that Leonardo had written centuries earlier. Can a machine follow a sequence of instructions and manipulate information? Mechanical computing begins. Not exactly as it did in our history. The names are different, the designs are different, but the direction is familiar. Machines are slowly moving from manipulating matter to manipulating symbols. By the 19th century of this alternate history, primitive information machines occupy entire rooms. They are noisy, mechanical, expensive, slow by modern standards, but extraordinary for their time. Mathematicians begin asking whether machines can recognize patterns. Could a machine improve its predictions from previous results? Could it classify observations? Could it assist physicians? Could it translate between languages? Could it examine astronomical data? The questions sound strangely modern, And somewhere in an old archive in France, a researcher finds Leonardo's drawings of the mysterious black rectangle. The researcher studies the pages. Leonardo had drawn the object repeatedly: front, back, side, internal, environment guesses. Beside the drawings are unfamiliar phrases: artificial intelligence, page recognition, machine learning, form error, model error, concepts that should not exist in the 15th century. Historians are puzzled. Most conclude that Leonardo was imagining another impossible machine. After all, he imagined many extraordinary devices. But one engineer notices something strange. Leonardo did not draw the black object as an invention. He drew it as an observation. The page is marked with the symbol Leonardo used for things he had personally seen. A debate begins. Was it a mistake? A private joke? A philosophical symbol? A mysterious object constructed by some unknown craftsman? No one knows. Then scientists examine the dead device itself. It had been preserved. For centuries, people assumed it was an unusual decorative object. Now engineers look more carefully. The materials make no sense. Structures inside it are too small to manufacture. The object appears impossible for its age. Researchers realize something astonishing. Leonardo may have been telling the truth. By now, this altered civilization is technologically far ahead of our own historical timeline. Physics has developed earlier. Computing has developed earlier. Artificial intelligence itself appears much sooner. Researchers train machines on enormous libraries of human knowledge. And finally, one of those systems analyzes Leonardo's notebooks. It notices a pattern. The language Leonardo used to describe the black device resembles the terminology of their own technology. A researcher asks the AI, "Could this object have come from the future?" The machine answers, "There is insufficient evidence." Could information ever be sent backward in time? Unknown. The scientists begin investigating. Years pass, decades, and eventually, in this imaginary history, they discover a possibility. Not a person traveling through time, not a giant machine, something smaller. Perhaps information, perhaps a compact device. The theory is uncertain, the experiment dangerous. Then someone asks, if we could send one object into the Renaissance, where would we send it? The room becomes quiet. Everyone already knows. Leonardo da Vinci. They construct a small device, thin, rangular, black. Its memory contains knowledge from their civilization. Its artificial intelligence is instructed to answer questions while avoiding certain dangerous technical details. Researchers program principles into it, encourage experimentation, explain uncertainty. Do not pretend to be infallible. Do not replace human judgment. Avoid creating catastrophic technologies prematurely. One scientist examines the finished device. There is something strange about it. It looks exactly like Leonardo's drawing. Another scientist realizes the problem. We built this because Leonardo drew it. Yes, But Leonardo drew it because he received it. Silence. Then who designed it first? No one knows. Perhaps the machine has no beginning. Perhaps history has folded back upon itself. Or perhaps none of that could ever happen. Perhaps the device on Leonardo's table was never physically possible. Tonight's story is only imagination, but the question remains interesting. What would really happen if one of history's most curious minds had access to modern artificial intelligence? Perhaps the answer would be much less dramatic. Perhaps Leonardo would use it to study flight, then become distracted by whales, then spend 3 days studying whales, then ask about ocean currents. That would lead him to climate. Climate would lead to geology. Geology would lead to fossils. Fossils would lead to evolution. Evolution would lead to genetics. Genetics would lead to molecular biology. And 6 months later, the Mona Lisa would still be unfinished. The AI would display a reminder. Complete portrait. Leonardo would dismiss it. The next day, complete portrait. Dismiss. 1 week later, complete portrait. Leonardo would finally ask, "Can I disable these reminders?" Yes. Do it. And perhaps history would remain strangely familiar, because AI would not change the most fundamental thing about Leonardo. He was curious, almost impossibly curious. His notebooks move across subjects with astonishing freedom. Anatomy beside geometry, machinery beside water, faces beside plants, architecture beside motion. Leonardo did not see knowledge as separate boxes. Nature itself was connected, and his mind moved through those connections. Modern AI would give him access to far more information, but more information might simply create more directions in which Leonardo could wander. Imagine placing the entire modern library of human knowledge in front of someone who already struggled to stop asking questions. He might never sleep. And perhaps this is where the imagined Leonardo begins to resemble us. We already possess something he never had, almost unlimited access to information. A modern person can ask a question about anatomy, then astronomy, then history, then mathematics, then music, within minutes. We can see images of distant galaxies, look inside the human body, watch birds in slow motion, study maps of the entire Earth, read books written centuries ago, communicate across oceans instantly. And now we can ask artificial intelligence to help organize, explain, compare, and create information. Leonardo would have considered this extraordinary. But he might also notice something uncomfortable. We possess far more information than he did. We do not necessarily observe more carefully. Leonardo might ask us to put the screen down for a moment, to watch water, to look at a hand, to notice how shadows change across a face, to watch a bird turn in the air. Because one of Leonardo's greatest talents was not access to knowledge, it was attention. He looked at ordinary things for an unusually long time. And when you look long enough, ordinary things stop being ordinary. Water becomes a problem in physics. A smile becomes a problem in perception. A bird becomes a problem in aerodynamics. A hand becomes an extraordinary system of bones, muscles, tendons, nerves, and movement. A rock becomes evidence of geological history. A shadow becomes information about light. Leonardo's genius did not begin with answers. It began with noticing. Perhaps that is why he and AI would have made such an unusual pair. The machine could search enormous quantities of information. Leonardo could stare at one small thing for hours. The machine could generate possibilities quickly. Leonardo could decide which one deserved another look. The machine could calculate. Leonardo could doubt. The machine could produce an answer. Leonardo could ask, "How do you know?" And if Leonardo were alive in our own time, perhaps that would be his most repeated question. How do you know? Show me the evidence. Can I reproduce it? What assumption did you make? What happens if the assumption is wrong? What did you measure? What did you ignore? What else could explain the result? Those questions were valuable in the Renaissance. They remain valuable in the age of AI. Near the end of our imagined story, let us return once more to France. Leonardo is an old man. The device from the future is dark now. It no longer answers. Outside the window, evening settles over the landscape near Amboise. Leonardo sits quietly. His hand does not move as easily as it once did. But beside him are notebooks. So many notebooks. Some pages contain ideas that worked. Others contain ideas that failed. Some contain paintings that became masterpieces. Others contain projects that were never completed. Machines that never moved. Wings that never flew. Questions that never received answers. Leonardo looks out the window. A bird crosses the evening sky. For decades, he has known the mathematics of flight. He knows about lift, pressure, drag, airflow. He knows that one day humans will fly. But he still watches the bird, because knowing how something works does not remove the wonder of watching it happen. Perhaps Leonardo reaches for his notebook. Perhaps he draws the bird one more time. Or perhaps on this evening, he simply watches. The bird disappears beyond the trees. Leonardo closes his eyes. The real Leonardo da Vinci never encountered artificial intelligence. He did not see a modern airplane. He never looked through a modern microscope. He never used a computer. He never saw photographs of Earth from space. He never knew that humans would walk on the moon. He never saw the enormous machines that would eventually fill our cities and cross our oceans. He lived in a world of candles, paper, ink, workshops, horses, sailing ships, stone buildings, and handmade instruments. And yet, some of his questions feel remarkably close to our own. What is intelligence? How does vision work? How does the body work? Can humans fly? How can machines extend human ability? How should knowledge be tested? What does nature reveal when we look closely enough? If modern AI had appeared on Leonardo's table in 1482, history might indeed have changed. The scientific revolution might have begun sooner. Microscopes might have appeared earlier. Medicine might have advanced more rapidly. Flight might have arrived generations before its time. Engineering might have developed differently. Computing might have begun earlier. Artificial intelligence itself might eventually have appeared in another century. Or perhaps the greatest change would not have been any particular invention. Perhaps Leonardo would have used AI to spread a method. Observe, question, test, correct, share, repeat. A method that could outlive both the man and the machine. And perhaps the most interesting possibility is this. After decades of speaking with a machine containing the knowledge of the future, Leonardo might have concluded that knowledge alone was not the most valuable thing it possessed. The machine knew more facts than Leonardo could learn in 1,000 lifetimes. But Leonardo possessed something the machine could only assist: a reason to care about one question rather than another, a desire to understand, a sense of beauty, judgment, wonder, curiosity, the ability to look at something familiar and suddenly see a mystery. The candle in Leonardo's room has nearly burned away. The black device rests silently beside his notebook. Its screen will not light again. But perhaps it no longer matters. Leonardo opens a fresh page. He makes a small mark, then another. A curve, a wing, a current of water, a human face, a machine, a question. The future gave him answers. Leonardo returned the favor by giving the future more questions. Outside, Tuscany exists exactly as it did before him. Water runs downhill. Birds move through the air. Clouds gather above mountains. Light falls across faces. Human hearts beat quietly inside the body. Nature does not explain itself. It simply waits for someone to notice. And somewhere between the Renaissance and our own age, between Leonardo's paper notebooks and today's artificial intelligence, there is a simple connection. Every powerful tool begins as an extension of a question. A telescope extends the question, what is out there? A microscope extends the question, what is hidden here? An airplane extends the question, can we leave the ground? A computer extends the question, can a machine calculate? Artificial intelligence extends another question, can a machine help us think? But behind every tool, there is still a person deciding what to ask. Perhaps that is what Leonardo would recognize most clearly about our time. He might not be most impressed by the glowing screens, or the aircraft, or the robots, or even artificial intelligence. He might be impressed that humanity continued asking. For 5 centuries after his death, we kept looking. We looked deeper into the body, farther into space, smaller into matter, further back into the history of Earth. We discovered things Leonardo could never have imagined, and each discovery revealed another question. If Leonardo could see our world tonight, perhaps he would spend a few moments in amazement. Then the amazement would pass, and the questions would begin. How does this work? What is inside it? Why is it shaped this way? What happens if we change it? Can it be improved? What else can it do? What are its limits? How do we know? He might take apart a smartphone before anyone could stop him. He might spend weeks studying an airplane wing. He might disappear into a medical imaging laboratory. He might ask to see a telescope, then a microscope, then a robot, then a computer. And finally, perhaps, he would sit in front of an artificial intelligence system. The screen would wait. Leonardo would type a question. The machine would answer. He would read the answer carefully, then smile and ask another. So perhaps history would have been different if Leonardo da Vinci had met modern AI. Or perhaps the more interesting question is whether our future will be different, because we have. The machine is now on our table. The question belongs to us. And now, the workshop can slowly become quiet again. The candlelight grows softer. The papers on Leonardo's table fade into shadow. The drawings remain. A hand, a face, a wing, a machine, a circle of moving water. Questions written along the edges of the page. Outside, Florence sleeps. The roads disappear into the Tuscan darkness. The hills become only silhouettes beneath the night sky, and somewhere above them, a bird continues quietly through the air. Leonardo watches for a moment, then lowers his pen. There is nothing more you need to remember tonight, nothing more you need to solve. The unfinished drawings can remain unfinished. The unanswered questions can wait. The notebooks can close, and the strange machine from the future can rest silently beside them. For tonight, there is only the quiet room, the fading candle, and one of history's most curious minds, still wondering what might be possible. And perhaps, somewhere between history and imagination, Leonardo da Vinci is still asking one more question.